Now, would you believe that the NHS England's non-clinical staff have increased by more than a staggering 185,000 employees, and that's just England. In the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2023, there has been an increase of 42.6% in staff numbers, a staggering increase, and this just doesn't make any sense because the NHS waiting times are continuing to quadruple while money is being poured in to pay for all these seemingly useless hirings. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the Communications Director for the Campaign for Independent Britain, Ben Phillips. Ben, thanks for joining us in the studio. We live in a time where the NHS is treated as a church. It's been deified. And yet, when we analyse the figures, we see a different picture. We're seeing a staggering increase in numbers, a staggering increase in budget, a staggering increase in waiting times. Tell us, how did you get these figures?
Yeah, well, we're indebted to our research affiliate, Brexit Facts for EU, who produce daily reports on a whole range of issues. Up to Brexit and beyond, it was primarily over EU issues and Brexit-related issues, but increasingly we're looking at the post-Brexit agenda and including the NHS, which is obviously a vital institution for all of us, and how that money is spent given the size of the budget and the numbers of people employed. And the headline figures for the country as a whole, for the UK as a whole, is simply extraordinary. So if you're looking at non-frontline staffing figures from just a 3-year period from January 2020 to December 2023, in January 2020 we had 1,275,883 members of non-frontline staff employed, and that increased by December 2023 to 1,488,207, an extraordinary 16.6% increase, or 212,000 people.
And it's worth pointing out, this doesn't include GPs, and it doesn't include non-care. So the true figure is even greater, but we don't know those numbers because they hide them.
Exactly, yes, exactly. So, and given, as I said, given the size of the budget and given the size of the NHS, the fact that we don't have the official figures is simply shocking.
And yet, the budget, 182 billion quid in 2022-23, a 6% increase year on year, every year since 2019, an extra 6 billion thrown at the NHS in the spring budget by Jeremy Hunt. We continue to hear that the NHS needs more money, and it's only 7 days from falling apart, yet it's been pumped with more money, pumped with more staff, and yet we've still got £7.7 million people, beg your pardon, on the waiting list. Doesn't that say to you that this is a system that needs total reform?
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the things we will be campaigning on. Whatever your political affiliations, we need an NHS that's fit for purpose for the 21st century, and I think the current structure is frankly beginning to fall apart, and everybody, I think, recognises that. Record waiting times, again, for A&E and ambulances as well, just simply add to the problem, to the existing problems. And 7.8 million on the NHS waiting list at the moment is just, for England alone, just shows you the scale of the crisis.
And yet, Ben, we seem to be in a competitive sport to throw more money at the NHS. It's verboten to discuss restructuring it. Will we ever be in a position where we're able just to let the data lead this, or are we being led by the emotions, the fact that it's something that we can't touch because we're proud of it, it's the best institution in the UK, when the data seems to paint a different picture?
Well, I think if the political class were worth their money, they would have an open and honest discussion about this, because this is not a crisis across Europe. They have partly government-funded NHS and also insurance-based schemes as well. And I think we need to look at alternative schemes.
So how could that work in Britain? What, maybe people being encouraged to opt out if they're better off, to go partly private? What things could we look at?
I think you could look at tax incentives to encourage people to do so. That, that doesn't mean that they don't continue to pay tax, they do, but what it does do is alleviate pressure for those who can't afford it. And I think it encourages people to take responsibility for their own healthcare systems as well, and I think a measure of that would I think is inevitable.
And yet we're about to, by the looks of it, heading for a Labour government, but Wes Phillips seems, Wes seems more progressive. Do you think there will be an opportunity for people like Wes Streeting to discuss this more openly, or are we just tethered to this notion that the NHS is untouchable?
Well, if he is good on his word, then we need to take him at his word and follow him very, very closely. This government should have been a lot bolder and a lot more honest about it during its 14 years in power. Let's hope that Wes Streeting and the Labour Party can be honest and do something about it.
Great conversation. Thank you for joining us in the studio. That was Ben Phillips from the comms director for the Campaign for an Independent Britain. Thank you very much for joining us. Superb.